Глубоко уважаемые
Dear colleagues, dear guests, dear friends, let me declare open a session of the Dissertation Council for Defense of Thesis by Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani for the degree of Candidate of Philology, Specialty 100201, Russian language, on the theme Phraseological Euphemisms of Russian against the background of Arabic, Linguoculturological aspect, Thematic group, social vices. According to the order of St. Petersburg University of the 24th of July 2020, number 69001/1, I, Sadova Tatiana Simon, Doctor of Philology, Professor of the Department of Russian Language of St. Petersburg University, was appointed Chairman of this Dissertation Council. Other members of the Dissertation Council were appointed by the same order. Let me introduce them to you. Everyone is present. Let me start with Silvestova Yelena Ivanovna, Doctor of Philology, Professor, acting head of the Russian Language Department for Humanitarian and Natural Faculties of St. Petersburg University. Priyomisheva Marina Nikolaevna, Doctor of Philology, Senior Researcher, Institute for Linguistic Studies of the Russian Academy of Sciences. In the remote access mode, at our session, we have Zykova Irina Vladimirovna, Doctor of Philology, Associate Professor, Leading Researcher of the Department of Theoretical and Applied Linguistics of the Institute of Linguistics of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Irina Vladimirovna, can you hear us? Can you see us? Very well, thank you. Protasova Ekaterina Yurievna, Doctor of Pedagogy, Adjunct Professor, Department of Languages, University of Helsinki, Finland. Ekaterina Yurievna, can you see? Can you hear us? Can you see us? Yes. Excellent, thank you. Naturally, the degree applicant is also present, Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani, and his academic advisor, Doctor of Philology, Professor at the Department of Russian Language of St. Petersburg University, Mikhail Borisovich Popov. To improve the quality of connection, dear colleagues working in the remote access mode, please switch off your microphones, but remember to turn them back on when you're given the floor to present your reviews or ask questions, if any. Let me also inform you that our session is being broadcast online at St. Petersburg University website. It's also being simultaneously translated from English into Russian or from English into Russian. During the live broadcast of the council session, an email address is currently displayed to which all the listeners can express their opinions and send questions to the degree applicant, if any, online, but only regarding his thesis and the ongoing scientific discussion of his speech. These questions shall be forwarded to me by my technical services, and I shall voice them during this discussion. Questions should be, let me say again, related to the strictly to the applicant's speech and the content of his thesis. Questions not related to the scientific discussion, to the thesis, or evaluation of the thesis shall not be presented. We kindly request all the speakers to introduce themselves, position, employment, in accordance with the order of awarding at St. Petersburg University the degree of Candidate of Science and Doctor of Science, approved by the local regulations of St. Petersburg University. A session of the Dissertation Council is considered competent if at least 2/3 of the approved members are present, but not less than 4 persons. Our council consists of 5 members. All 5 members are present, including 2 members in the remote interactive mode. All the members of the Dissertation Council and the applicant have audio-visual contact. Thus, I have to conclude we have the quorum. So this session is open and competent. Let me set forth the following procedure of today's session. This procedure includes 15 items. Every council member has a copy, so I shall not read the entire document because it will take quite a lot of time. The only thing I have to ask, if you, dear council members, agree with the suggested procedure. Dear council members, if you have no objections, let me proceed to the first item on our agenda, Chairman Summary Report on our degree applicant. The thesis by Mansour, Mohammed, Hassan, Sammani for the degree of Candidate of Philology, Specialty 10-0201 Russian language, on the theme Phraseological Euphemisms of Russian against the background of Arabic Linguoculturological aspect, Thematic group Social Vices, was accepted for defense by the order of Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University on the 24th of July 2020, number 6900/1. Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani wrote his thesis at St. Petersburg University under the guidance of Doctor of Philology, Professor of the Department of Russian Language of St. Petersburg University, Popov Mikhail Borisovich. The number of publications setting forth the main results of the thesis, according to the enclosed list, is 8. In peer-reviewed publications from the list approved by the Ministry of Education of Russian Federation, 4 publications. In journals indexed in the scientific databases Web of Science and Scopus, no publications. The degree applicant submitted to the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University a full set of documents for acceptance of the thesis for consideration and defense. All the documents comply with Article 12, Section 3 of the Order. All the documents submitted by the applicant, according to the information I received from the curator, comply with the requirements and are kept in the applicant's attestation file. Copies are available from the officer of the Dissertation Council Activity Support Department, who is now present at the session. Before I give the floor to the degree applicant, I have to ask, do you, dear council members, have any general questions to the degree applicant, and is it necessary to review the entire list of documents submitted by the degree applicant? Marina Nikolaevna, Yelena Ivanovna, what do you think? Irina Vladimirovna? This is not necessary. Katerina Yurievna, thank you very much. Thus, let's proceed to the second item of our procedure and give the floor to the degree applicant, Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani, to talk about the key points of his study. His speech should not take more than 15 minutes. Dear Chairman of the Dissertation Council, dear Council members, dear guests and colleagues, let me present to you my thesis, which focuses on the analysis of euphemisms from the perspective of linguoculturology. The object of my study are phraseological euphemisms of the Russian language representing social vices of the man. I decided to limit myself to such vices as theft, bribery, and prostitution. I found it interesting and important to compare the Russian phraseological euphemisms with the Arabic ones. However, when analyzing Russian phraseology, the Arabic material was used only as a background, and mainly in cases where comparing the Russian and Arabic material provided the basis for comparative linguocultural commentary. The subject of the study is the process of phraseological euphemisation in speech. The aim of my study was to reveal the euphemistic function of the phraseological units characterized in human social vices. The problem to be solved in the study is revealing the role of cultural component in euphemization of speech. In order to achieve this set goal, it was necessary to solve the following tasks: to develop a theoretical basis for research based on the study of scientific literature and problems of phraseology, euphemia, and linguoculturology, identify euphemisms that represent social vices such as bribery, theft, and prostitution in dictionaries and mass media texts and fiction literature. Correlate revealed phraseological units and their components with folklore, historical, literary, and other cultural layers, and analyze their links with cultural codes, anthropic, somatic, etc., to determine the symbolic potential of euphemisms, their reference, and importance as stereotypes in culture, to identify the cultural and national specificity of euphemisms in the representation of phenomena associated with these social vices in the Russian and Arabic linguo cultures. In my thesis, we used a broad understanding of the scope of phraseology, not only the nuclear units of phraseology, but also other superwords, set expressions obtained mainly from lexicographical sources, as well as those confirmed in writing and speech practice of native speakers, with text examples from journalism, art, and cinema texts are considered as language material. The method of linguocultural analysis of euphemisms in our study aims to reveal the cultural semantics attached to units through interpretation of phraseology or its components in the cultural space. That is, through correlation of their components with layers of culture, archetypes, folklore, religion, etc., which serve as an information background for their perception, correlation of phraseology with cultural codes, as well as disclosure of a metaphorical foundation of euphemisms and stereotypes, as well as disclose the foundation of euphemisms. As it was mentioned already, analysis was conducted in 3 thematic blocks, and in each block the analysis is presented on the main cultural layers mentioned above. As a result of conducted research, the following conclusions were drawn. Analysis of phraseological units associated with the above-mentioned vices has shown that euphemisms of phraseology largely depends on the cultural component of its meaning and is perceived by native speakers on the basis of common associations, perceptions, and background knowledge, which serve as a means of both comprehension and evaluation of these phenomena. Interpretation of euphemisms in the cultural space allowed to reveal symbols, stereotypes, and reference notions that are relevant for Russian and Arabic linguistic cultures. Euphemisms and phraseologies that define social vices actualize the most ancient archetypes as clear, dark, own, foreign, right, left, as in the minds of native speakers. The background for perception of their cultural semantics is provided by various discourses, mythology, religion, customs and rites, folklore, fiction, cinema, and others. We revealed the analysis with the correlation with the following codes: spatial, food, zoomatic, somatic, etc. The analyzed phraseological units of Russian and Arabic languages are mostly metaphorical and have vivid national specifics. Contribute to the revaluation of these social vices on the basis of their identification with the phenomena of the surrounding reality. Have a positive and neutral assessment in everyday consciousness of speakers of Russian and Arabic languages. Let's compare. Grease the wheels, put on the legs, feed the state sparrow, pass the baton, such as ready to steal surma from your eyes, dawn grins, etc. When comparing the Russian and Arab units, some general cultural and national features of Russian and Arab images of the world are highlighted. Common were universal ontological principles, patterns of correct behavior, and general cultural phenomena. The nationally specific as material values, traditions, rituals, and behavior stereotypes that go back to certain cultural and historical realities. The modern units reflect social and economic features of modern life in Russian and Arab societies. Not so much condemn, but rather than veil, hint, justify the reprehensible phenomena. Of late, there has been a trend towards joking euphemization, which indicates a change in the big picture of the world in both nations. The euphemistic set expressions in both languages are characterized by a pragmatic orientation and a lack of unambiguous evaluation. Due to their comic, rhyming, and cultural fame, they create a background for neutralizing or changing the negative evaluation of the subject of speech to positive. The theoretical importance of my work lies in the possibility of using its results in further research on phraseology and linguoculturology in comparison with the Arabic language, as well as in the study of euphemization process in particular. The findings will contribute to solving some controversial questions about the historical and cultural basis for the use of phraseology in compared languages. The practical significance lies in the fact that the language material can be used for creation of linguistic and cultural dictionaries of euphemisms, bilingual dictionaries of phraseology, modern explanatory dictionaries, as well as manuals on phraseology and euphemisms. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Let me ask council members and invite them to ask questions, if any. Irina Vladimirovna, do you have any questions to the degree applicant? Ekaterina Yurievna, I have no questions. Elena Ivanovna, you want to save your questions for later. Marina Nikolaevna, let me ask one question. Now is once again I started wondering, how do you define phraseological units and phraseological slash euphemistic unism? Can you think of any phraseological units that are not euphemistic? What is the theoretical basis, your theoretical basis for this distinction? Your question is how to define. The most important thing is that the denoted object had the negative, to have the negative character. There should be that the denoted object, something should be, something is wrong, such as vices, the same technique is sometimes used in politics to give oblique reference, not to offend. So the first point is the theme. Also, not all phraseological units are euphemisms. It depends on the context. It should weaken the negative assessment of the negative phenomena it denotes. For example, let's take the priests of love. For example, to start your day with your left leg. So there is no negative. There's no negative connotation. Yes, your answer is very clear. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have more questions? Maybe the attendees, maybe our guests have questions too. Then, thank you. Let us proceed to the official reviews posted at St. Petersburg University website, and I assume we may drop the descriptive part and only present the key points and critical remarks, if any, of the thesis submitted for defense. Let me inform you that we received no external reviews, and let me give the floor to Ekaterina Ivanovna Silvestre for her review. The positive part I should drop, right? You are the first speaker, so you relevance of. I would like to. I'd like to check if I pronounce your name correctly. It's Mansour, Mohammed, Hassan, Sammani. Am I right? The relevance of the thesis under review is explained by the relevance in modern science of linguoculturological sphere and the material of two languages that defines, through comparison, universal phenomena and specific features, vision of the world of representatives of different cultures. This has great potential. Speaking of languages which are far away from each other from the point of history and culture, comparative linguoculturology today is represented works on the basis of the Russian language, Chinese, the use of such non-related language as Arabic. That is why the theme of the thesis seems even more relevant: development of euphemism for important social phenomena considered on the material of the Arabic language. Euphemization, which involves two important spheres of personal and social, define motives of linguotactics, of speech behavior, the use of phraseological instruments that coincide or specific and stylistic peculiarities, the choice of phraseological material with euphemistic function, prostitution, theft and bribery and other socially significant spheres is beyond doubt, because phraseology as the sphere of expressive denomination always includes a wide range of various units which makes the task set by the degree applicant well justified. The structure of the work, the logic of the thesis, correlation between the contents and tasks comply with the most strict requirements. The author examines various opinions in the theoretical and practical part, which covers the subject, linguoculturology, various works on euphemisation. So everything is in place here. In the practical third chapter, the author not only represents expressions in every language, but interprets the value of relying on context. He uses illustrations. Some refer to classical literature of the 19th century, others with today, with the modern world, which demonstrate relevance of individual expression and relevance of the theme. The author demonstrates the cultural, historic background of the life of the Russian people, which brought to Fraser nomination of specific. I liked many points and a wide range of aspects of this work. For example, ethno-marked culture codes of food, furniture, zoomorphic, everything, all these are covered here. The author refers to symbolic frequency components such as which include more relevant manifestations such as somatism, colorative red. All these descriptions, especially those including commentaries to Arabic expressions, were very interesting, because here these differences on this marked level, and the author proves it. One should note diversity of units in ancient archetypal relationships, such as dark, light, open, hidden, front, back, etc. It's also important to say that the author considers various mechanisms of euphemization, various degrees of coding. And here, it seems to us, it would make sense to create a system of units and some qualitative data that would prove relevance for native speakers of nominations of a specific type. Obviously, the work conducted by the author, and here we talk about movies, fiction, literature, and the author interprets separate expressions, which I have doubts about some of them, but this diversity of the work and wide range of coverage, these are very positive. I think the connection with bribery behave in an immodest way. On page 71, immodest in demonstration of your financial status, and in my opinion, the phraseological status of this expression requires verification. As a very promising statement on social conditions for ideal on page 92 is not well illustrated. It's interesting, but it would be good to have more arguments. We don't know if the author means idioms. So how is verbalized, for example, that theft is accepted. This is a conclusion, but I could not see direct, or for example, a crow can be. So we have this. If you can call a thief when he is caught, after he's caught, and on phraseological unit, I did not see the methodological transformation demonstrates not the folkloric basis, but the social and historic background. Tailors often appropriated remaining fabric, and this is still true today when our parents ordered clothes from tailors. But I think the folkloric component here is very vague from this phenomenon. And also, I think the author neglects the pragmatic components. For example, smart hands not only nominates quality but also warns you against someone with whom you have to be careful. And in conclusion, I'd like to specially comment on perfect presentation of the work, speaking of paragraphs, punctuation, references. So I really enjoy reading it. Now let me proceed to questions. I have 3 questions. My first question: what's the method of search for context with the use of phraseological units used as examples? They got this question because a popular phraseologism is missing, and it's very common to gild one's hand with the symbolic potential of somatism hand. Speaking of types of discourses which served as background and basis for perception of cultural contexts of phraseological units, can they be graded by criteria by the contribution? Does the author have any information about preference or frequency of individual units and differences in their use? Facts of language game is from the back porch used by ship in a piece of paper used in the 19th century. How nomenclature of modern expressions is different from the array of tools used in the literature of the past. And in general, to sum it up, and considering the results achieved by the author, he managed to study linguocultural phraseology and euphemism and demonstrated the similarities based on close images of representatives of the two cultures and different that are relevant only for one culture, metaphors, beliefs which make us consider that the author has achieved his goal. The thesis, Phraseological Euphemisms in Russian against the background of Arabic linguoculturological aspect, social vices, corresponds to the basic requirements set by the order of the 1st of September 2016 on the order of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University. And the degree applicant Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani deserves awarding academic degree of Candidate of Philology, specialty 10-0201, Russian language. Article 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated. Thank you. Thank you, Yelena Ivanovna. We need to decide, dear colleagues, how should the applicant answer our questions? Individually, or should he answer all the questions together? First, I wanted to let me answer all the questions in the end. Thank you for this decision. And for diversity, I would like to give the floor to a member of the council working in the remote access mode, Irina Vladimirovna Zykova. Irina Vladimirovna, can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. I will start with relevance, which I would like to emphasize. The relevance of the study is beyond doubt and mostly is explained by its interdisciplinary nature, modern methodology, and focus on social and historically significant layer of Russian lexis compared with the similar material of Arabic. First of all, I'd like to say that the thesis is written according to the principles of the National School of Linguoculturology, one of the leading spheres of national philology, interaction of language, culture, and personality. Linguoculturology today has own efficient methods of analysis, the demand for which is constantly growing with the study of various language means and language picture of the world in general, which is proved by the work under study. The fact that in his study the author of the thesis uses the most colorful and bright from the point of study of linguocultural processes, language material, phraseology. As we know, phraseological units are rich sources of knowledge of historic specifics, of image of the world, of a nation, information of a relative of native speakers to current world. This fact emphasizes the need for linguocultural analysis of phraseology of various languages, interests, units that reflect the most problematic, painful zones of social life and dynamics of cultural and social changes seen through the prism of the language. Such zones include social vices, studied by Mansour Mohammed on phraseological material, which makes his thesis obviously relevant and up-to-date. Scientific novelty lies in development of an algorithm of multi-stage analysis of phraseological euphemisms, defined in Russian and Arabic language such social vices as bribery, theft, and prostitution. Through developed and successfully tested method, new data of cultural historical specific of these three types of social vices in Russian cultures compared with data of Arabic. Novelty of the thesis defined by development of method of linguocultural commentary to phraseologies aimed at multi-component of process of formation to languages, as well as mechanisms of coding of social information. Should be noted that creating such material of Russian and Arabic languages took place for the first time. Results obtained form a new image of phraseological euphemization of three social vices, through the prism of which we can again re-evaluate the internal potential of the language to overcome socially negative through representation in verbal form and preservation of cultural historic knowledge, credibility of results as well as conclusions and provisions set forth by Mansour Mohammed is determined that the materials are representative phraseological movement. The material was collected according to a principle from various periods and in transformed views the two cultures. It's also worth mentioning that the theoretical experience of national and international science in this study of euphemisms, phraseology, and linguoculturology. The main method is the method of linguocultural analysis developed by Veronika Nilaina and representatives of her school. It's worth mentioning that the author compares his data with data obtained earlier. Validity of conclusions can be evaluated as high because all the language facts and results are illustrated with sufficient number of examples. Very efficient, we found a principle of linguocultural analysis of Russian and Arabic phraseological euphemism, which includes study of archetypal oppositions, sources of these oppositions, literature, religion, folklore, cinema, etc., components relating to certain culture codes, thematic, zoomorph, spatial, etc., images of created euphemisms as symbolic, and the role of cultural component in negative social assessment. The structure is traditional for such works. In the first chapter, in order to address scientific, considers key questions on euphemism and euphemization. The author analyzes this information, provides solid theoretical basis for a study. In the second chapter, the author analyzes linguoculturology as an independent sphere of humanitarian knowledge, which is high in demand, so sphere of careful selection of linguocultural terms used to achieve the main aim of conducted study, such complex concepts as culture, cultural connotation, culture codes, cultural stereotypes. Also, I'd like to mention analysis of these conducted on the basis of respected scientific theories. The author provides an overview of methods which provide the author with useful instruments for choice of specific method, and use this method to analyze peculiarities of the material under study from Russian and Arabic language. Information in this chapter enables the author to develop the effective methodological instruments. That chapter contains results of linguocultural analysis, and the analysis makes the author make some conclusion in social vices which improve their perception of Russian-speaking and Arabic-speaking cultures, the methods of linguocultural coding of information, social and negative impacts, with the aim of providing psychological comfort. Results of the study described in this chapter demonstrate the author's ability to apply terminology of linguoculturology to diverse language material and obtain relevant opinions and empirical data. With overall positive impression made by the work, there are some points where I'd like to ask questions and comments. In our opinion, it's necessary to clarify the theoretical significance of the thesis on page 9, which is very general, too vague, without there's no analysis of specific contribution made by the study. It seems to us appropriate to explain the theoretical significance, which in our opinion deserves special attention. On pages 53 and 54, the thesis, the author listed linguocultural methods with reference to works where such methods are used. For example, use a conceptual ideographic method with reference to the work where this method in reality has not been used. The work under discussion is linguocultural reconstruction and method of linguocultural decode interpretation of cultural information. Third question: one of the stages of linguoculturological analysis of phraseological humans describes social vices is the use of semiotic oppositions, left, right, close, near. To conduct such a study, in addition to mentioned works, it would be appropriate to study classical work of the father of this method, Ivanov and Toporov, Slavonic language modeling semiotic system, and include it in the list of literature. This monograph studies such socially justified opposition as own foreign, considering specific features of the language material under study. If there's a question, how relevant could be this opposition for conception of bribery, theft, and prostitution? Because examples mostly apply to theft. This question is also connected with the fact that not necessarily this opposition, own or foreign, is expressed through the component own and foreign, but can be expressed through other components. Also, it's necessary to archetypal oppositions serve as basis for prostitution. In subsection 3.3 devoted to this social vice, archetypal opposition is mentioned only fragmented. Questions and comments do not affect the essence of the study and do not decrease its theoretical significance and practical value. The work is characterized by high style of scientific narration. The material has been carefully studied with the help of algorithm of study of social vices, and obtained results cause no doubt that all the provisions have clearly justified, and all the language facts are characterized by a high degree of argumentation. The results obtained in the course of this study are of interest for a number of philological disciplines and can be used in the course of lectures and practical seminars on phraseology, stylistics, linguoculturology, and intercultural communication. The thesis corresponds to the main requirements set by the order on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and the degree applicant Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani deserves awarding a degree of Candidate of Philology, specialty 10-0201 Russian language. Article 11 of the above mentioned order has not been violated by the author. Thank you. Thank you, Irina Vladimirovna. Next, council member to whom I would like to give the floor. Please remember, you don't have to read the entire review, is Ekaterina Yurievna. Thank you very much. Phraseology is frequently studied in different countries, and this enables us to rely on works created on different languages. It's very interesting to watch how the theoretical and practical tasks are addressed by Arabic and Russian scientists. The theoretical significance of the thesis makes a contribution to the metacognitive science. Any studies of the dark sides of the world are always of interest of a wide audience, or often called unhealthy. Social vices, through the prism of phraseology, there's no admiration of negative manifestation of human existence, but as mystery. What is really a vice? What other nations think of Russian euphemism connected with social definition of social phenomena? This is a big question. What then is appropriate and what is not? And in connection with it's obvious that the relevance of the work is obvious. It's many correlation values and internal. The language is conservative and preserve the moral values of the past. Euphemization is a process, is a bilateral program, and results can be as the initial neutral definition, and as the author claims, this is manifested in justification of specific situations. The choice of phraseology describing bribery, theft, and prostitution is very neutral because it relates to various phenomena reprimanded in any culture. Surprisingly, that they are still not discussed in open. People feel uncomfortable speaking about these social vices. This is a sensitive issue, emphasized by an inadequate attitude. It's different phraseological units and their components, connecting materials available from folkloric, historical, fiction, and other sources. The term culture code, developed for marketing and which has no clear scientific definition in linguistics, except maybe for quoted works by Kovshova, defining the code as anthropic, somatic, zoomorph, gastronomic, religious, can make its contribution in the theory of intercultural communication, as well as many other approaches of the thesis. Semiotic potential, value, and euphemisms as symbols take us into the field of relativity. A wide range of used methods of comparison, component, semantic, and comparative analysis, and linguocultural commentary. So it will be interesting to learn about additional adjectives red and light in both languages, or easy. Uses hedging, constantly demonstrates that this opinion is not the only one, and other interpretations are also possible. Its relevance on archetypal such as dark, hidden, closed, first, right, though obviously they are not always present, and not every example contains this component. Naturally, interpretation of methods and euphemism may not coincide. For example, give me cash not necessarily means a bribery, but requirements on shrewd person who is only or not only about a thief. But etymology in this case is doubtful. Take anything openly, not only, and brag about that, does not correspond to the typical description of the theft. Translation of Arabic expression, spray water, you'll feel cold, the cold. It's interesting to use the box and stomach, the said between phraseology and the space for creativity, for jokes. Also here we understand here the open box acts as an opposite to something hidden. A significant element is somatism hand as a typical theft instrument. Ethnographic information that Arab women, when could not undo their hair. 3 vices chosen by the author are not bribery, can be seen as a case of theft, and theft, as we know, sometimes considered noble, as in the prostitution is a much more complex problem with some gradations, and material demonstrates that the study of Russian classical literature at school makes you familiar with the culture of the 19th century, and its expressions remain clear even when some facts, phenomena disappear on the basis of archetypes in the form of a table. For example, when talking about bribery, make the event invisible, give an envelope to pay no tax on this income, not to be punished, spend professional or family circumstances, and change the name, make it part of the culture. This is for tea. It's a gift for your wife. Also, I'd like to ask some additional questions. 3 fields of phraseological euphemisms. Can you tell us where Arabic and Russian living cultures are similar and where they are most different from each other? Which phraseologism, in principle, could not be used in the Russian culture and the Arabic culture? How do you understand symbolic energy? You use this term. And the vices can not necessarily called with set expressions borrowed from, in other words, definition of vices in commandments is that there must be connotations connecting with some religious term. Also, it would be interesting to learn how the euphemism in Arabic language and in Russian languages have changed. Language material can enables you to make such generalization. For example, make contemporary Arabs understand old euphemisms. The thesis by Mansour, Mohammed, Hassan, Sammani on the theme Phraseological euphemism in Russian language against the background of Arabic linguocultural aspect, thematic group social vices corresponds to the basic requirements set by the order and awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and the degree applicant deserves being awarded the degree of Candidate of Philological Science, specialty 10-0201 Russian language, Article 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated. Thank you. Thank you, Ekaterina Yurievna. I beg your pardon. and I will drop the some parts of my review. I admire novelty, and I especially emphasize importance of the results because the author has analyzed 830 units of Russian and English. The structure is, the composition is, the work is very logical, very carefully written, attention to detail, and since the beginning you trust everything the author writes or says. No statement is ungrounded. Everything is very wisely written and very logical. And of course, the material is interesting, very new, at least for me personally. And many the work added is, but as always, of course, as in any study, has some points to be discussed, and my questions are relatively few, and they have no impact on overall high opinion of the thesis. One of the questions I would like to ask, I have a question: the borders of the object studied by the author, because the scope is very broad, and phraseology, everything, all aspects, set expressions, quotes, this is not, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good point, but I have a question maybe about the bottom limit, not the width, but whole number of expressions. They are not idiomatic. For example, such expressions as administrative rent, behave in an immodest manner, give me money is okay, voluntary contribution, receive envelopes, put your hand inside. How phraseological are these units which have not completely become phraseological units? And in my review I asked the author the question: what was the main criterion for the choice of material for his thesis? I'm talking about the limits of the object. And next I have a question about, I asked already the question and got an excellent answer, so I will not repeat my question. I liked this question, your answer very much. Thank you very much for your answer. And next also I have a question which interests me personally. A previous speaker asked the same question. The aim of the thesis was not comparing Russian and Arabic linguocultural images of the world, but the question, I want to ask this question out of curiosity: is there any, and you mentioned that in your introduction, are there any cases where evaluation of these or that wise do not coincide? And as I have already said, the questions are of working nature, and that is why the summary of my speech is that, in conclusion, I'd like to say that the work complies is an independent original study characterized by novelty, relevance, has high practical significance. The work is written on a good scientific level with the use of original language material, clear structure, the number of publications, articles published in journals recommended by our National Attestation Commission correspond to all the requirements, and definitely the thesis fully corresponds to the key requirements set by the order on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University on the 1st of September. And the author, Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani, deserves awarding degree of Candidate of Philology, specialty 10-0201, Russian language. Thank you for your attention. Marina Nikolaevna, thank you very much. I saved you. I'm trying to save your time. And finally, my review. I will drop the part describing on relevance and novelty. I think it's obvious that the work has both. I'd like to clarify some points. For example, it is very obvious to me that linguistic consideration of reprimanded social phenomena that you have described adds cultural and social and even legal aspect notes to the work. Bribery in expertise on bribery and other themes is highly relevant, and with obvious nature of the applied nature of this, such as existing speech markers. And from my experience, I can say that this theme today is relevant, is highly relevant, and linguists are struggling to address a method for identification of set expressions that promote bribery. And the cultural aspect of the work is obvious. The theoretical part of the thesis, which among other points connected with the theme of the study, describes in detail some points of general nature. The concept of linguoculturology, the place it occupies among other disciplines, description of schools of linguoculturology, and culturological aspect require good command of terminology of this relatively new sphere of linguistics. But in this part of the thesis, as it seems to me, you feel certain excess of information and lack of information on the other side. This happens when the author tries to cover a very wide range of issues, some that only partly related to the task of the study. The wide approach to phenomena and terms such as culture, stereotypes, precedent text, will certainly be insufficient. There will certainly be some scientific aspect neglected or not mentioned by the author, as it seems to me should be mentioned by all means. In our case, I cannot, with excellent command and interest of Kursk, Vologorsk, Volgograd, Kemerovo, Irkutsk, Voronezh, scientists, some reason does not include the works of scientists from St. Petersburg. For example, Vladimir Viktorovich Kolesov, professor, head of our department many years, who devoted the last years of his life to the study of language mentality, which he believed is part of cognitive linguistics. This addition seems necessary to me, mostly because among the scientists working on cognitive nature of the language, involved in discussion of cultural concepts and symbolic words. Russian, the name of Vladimir Viktorovich Kolesov is very significant. The practical part of the thesis, in my opinion, is a serious study of the main phraseological units representing the above-mentioned social vices. Mansour Mohammed justly says that semantics, a phraseological unit, very much depends on the cultural significance of on page 64. And the basis of linguocultural commentary is built upon the reference and the cultural reference using cultural stereotype, culture code, culture archetype, etc. Such principle of analysis, according to the author, enables, I'm quoting, to identify cultural, national features. It's a euphemistic function. This is a very good approach, fully justified. The list of Russian sources, factual material, includes many and very diverse, and by time includes text from the 18th and style from modern newspaper publication and folklore manuscripts to classical works of the 19th, 20th centuries. Such wide use of diverse texts evokes respect for the author, who is not a native speaker of Russian, and reading so many works in Russian certainly required certain work and patience. What he managed to the code spheres of Russian euphony is characterized by the research chapter. Arab material, which is smaller and acts as background for linguocultural peculiarities of Russian phraseological euphemisms, is perfect, semantically accurate, with sufficient and exhaustive commentaries. Good example of precedent euphemistic expressions on prostitution from well-known Egyptian movies, given on pages 123, 124. With that, I have a question about how the terms stereotype and precedent expression are different. Analyzing set phrases from films, the author calls them stereotype, phraseological euphemism, yet they're closer to precedent expressions. Maybe this mixture is explained by association of one thing with another, to define various types of semantic connections of a specific euphemism with a culture code or cultural archetype. For example, popular in Russian languages words of Vereshchagin, the character himself is associated with stereotype of bribe. In joking manner, ironically, this discusses accepting bribes, page 76. This stereotype is associated. So here one gets questions. The use of the term parameological phraseology used on page 84. Is this not a repetition if by phraseology includes any set unit of the language, including proverbs, traditionally classified as parameers? It's necessary to say that the author has immediately identified a list of expressions which by its main feature, repetitiveness. This comment is necessary because Russian set expressions are very diverse by composition, style, origin, etc. They depend to various degree on deep national cultural semantics, which the author has defined as its final goal. The author, for example, uses the expression for the boots for my wife, this old, which in some folkloric proverbs. Here, it's talking about female boots, and boots as an equivalent of wealth is mostly worn by men. And in folkloric texts usually, if women wear, they wear small boots, booties, and for the boots for my wife is a set syntactic structure with the aim to give something, with the purpose to give somebody something, the aim to buy something. So this construction has wide potential, the lexical significance. Children for nuts, for the car for my son. So formal similarity with for milk for the children is similar. This expression is only decently related with the boots which you wear, you find yourself in a positive situation. Female boots is a reality of Soviet life, created by Soviet women. That is why in the 19th century advertising, MMM character called Leonid Golubkov, the desired aim of contribution, kept saying that he's saving to buy boots for his wife. And then this slogan was frequently repeated in popular commercials, became speech precedent and a symbol of its life. And so I'm giving some examples of modern commercials. And here is impossible to qualify this expression as a phraseologism, even in a broad sense. Speaking of theft, our degree applicant makes the following suggestion. In the people believe that tailors have the habit of stealing fabric, on page 95. Here I agree with Elena Ivanovna commenting this expression and using a number of proverbs from Dal collection, uses from Vizin fable, Portnoy, and Tailor and Monkey. Yet it seems to me that it would make more sense to refer to Russian fairy tales. Characters are very diverse and include all traditional crafts. Out of 677 fairy tales collected by Kruglov, only 2 are about tailors. And his typological feature is not being a thief, but being smart and clever, intelligent. According to folklorists, this is quite a late motive that emerged in the 17th century and most maybe borrowed from Western, Polish, Ukrainian, Belarusian stories. No thieves worse than tailors, etc. So these considerations, recommendations, and some comments evidence that the thesis by Mansour Mohammed Hassan is certainly a success, has obvious advantages and research prospects. It includes many interesting observations, serious comments, for example, on stylistic synonyms, unavoidable in certain communicative situations, or euphemistic potential, phraseologism. Should be mentioned the perfect style of narration, the author's ability to express his words in Russian clearly and logically, and the author, let me emphasize, is not a native speaker Russian. Everything here manifested the thesis by Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani on the theme Phraseological euphemisms in Russian against the background of linguoculturological aspect. Social vices corresponds to the basic requirements set by the order of the 1st of September 2016 on the number 6821/1 on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University. And the degree applicant, Mansour Mohammed Hassan Sammani, deserves awarding academic degree of Candidate of Philological Sciences, specialty 10-0201, Russian language. Article 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated by the author. Now, I would like you to answer the main questions asked by the reviewers. Dear Chairman, dear Council members, I thank you for your kind words about my thesis, for questions and comments. And at the same time, I'd like to reply to your questions and some comments. Let me start from the review of Tatiana Simonova Sadova. The stereotypical expressions following Kirillova, we understand phraseologism, in the image of which the normative aspect of choice predominates over the semantic one. They save an attitude of language reality. I agree with Tatiana Simonovna that when this happened, understanding stereotypical ones are attached to expressions, and they serve to evaluate and compare. I also agree with that the terminology of parameological phraseology is tautological. However, this term was used, since we used it only relation to proverbs and sayings, which and their participation in euphemisation process. Tatiana Simonovna gave interesting considerations about for boots meaning bribe, a large bribe. However, in our work, we used another expression used by Alexander Fyodorov. It will come on the boots, which means you'll get it a bribe. We extended this so we on the boots there is some correlation with modern usage, and we often came across for the boots for my wife, and the context confirmed our assumption about the euphemistic potential of this phrase in the situation of bribery and corruption, and in it's a phraseological units, even when not connected with the bribery in a broad sense, in the broadest sense, depending on the context. And I thank Tatiana Simonova for attracting my attention to folklore, folk tales from the collection of Kruglova. Using this material would allow me to clarify and adjust some conclusions of my study. Thank you, Tatiana Simonova, for this valuable and other comments. Now I would like to proceed to questions of Elena Ivanovna Silverstova. Elena Ivanovna touched in her review a question important for me about the methodology of searching for contexts. When I started working, I wanted to limit myself only to the national course of the Russian language, the source of examples, but the task was getting harder because the course gives very modest results when searching for word combinations. So next, we have to use other search systems, information funds, and electronic resources which provided a wide selection of contexts and illustrations, which provided a high degree of relevance of our results. As for mentioned above, phraseology give on the poor, we have it, but we deliberately exclude it from our euphemistic bound, because judging by the context, this phraseology is not devoid of the negative connotation of what it denotes. As for the contribution of different types of discourse into the process of formation of phraseological units, euphemisms, I may say that it, according to the data, most widely used units, social and historical discourse, folkloric units, even less literary discourse units, and even less frequent are units representing mythological, religious, and film discourse. As for frequency of individual units when reviewing social verses, according to our material, the bribes justifying them, don't you'll smear, you won't go anywhere. In the context of theft, frequency units with compound ally strange, such as to take for something foreign from someone else's pocket, talk about prostitute, most priestess of love, to sell oneself, as well as units with the component panel, to go to the panel, take it from the panel, etc. Speech technology preferences, the speaker defined by depending from its position on communication. It either veils, either hints, either justifies, either encourages or disapproves, etc. Our material confirms that the use of from the back porch and lamb in a piece of paper, not limited to classical literature, absolutely available modern contexts of examples of their use. Modern expressions, in our view, consists that in addition to a conditional euphemistic function, the modern euphemisms display values and changes in the picture of the world of Russian Arabic languages, express social networks and consumer character, and they demonstrate pragmatic orientation and aspiration, humorous nomination. Let me proceed to review by Marina Nikolaevna is asked question about the opposition friend foreign. How can become bribery, theft and prostitution? It seems to me that this archetype, judging by the language material, is more relevant for conceptualization of of theft. I couldn't find any correlation between the archetype your own, someone else's, and vices such as bribery and prostitution. This can be explained by the fact the archetypal component is not always present, not in every example it can be identified. Therefore, in our study, comparatively less information is provided on archetypal oppositions fixed in phraseological units that characterize prostitution. All the comments and suggestions of Irina Vladimirovna expressed in her review I am thankful to accept and will take into account in my future work. Important questions were asked by Ekaterina Yurievna Protasova. Term symbolic energy appeared in our study spontaneously. The term perhaps too metaphorical. We wanted to define symbolic potential of phraseology, which, when interpreting it in cultural space, of course, it has nothing to do with a similar term which is being used, for example, by astrologers. Symbolic energy. Ekaterina Yurievna asked the question if vices are always religious discourse. In our case, all three social vices considered in the thesis possess euphemistic value ascending to religious sphere. This can be explained. Religious phraseologies have educational and moralizing character, and having special status in the culture provide more convenient discussion of human vices. When we talk about relationship of modern Arabs to the old phraseological units, let me say that they are more relevant in journalism and fiction. Modern speakers of Arabic to some extent understand the old phraseologisms, but they seldom use them in everyday speech except for religious expressions and expressions that have conversational variants. And I only have to answer review by Marina Nikolaevna. Question about borders of phraseology indeed is can be the subject for discussion, can be interpreted differently depending on the position. In our case, the main criteria for selecting the material was phraseological units, word combinations that are combined by usability and reproducibility. This is explained that for our study it was very important to use units which can be used not in the semantic structure but speech use. For this reason, we use periphrases as a special type of idiomatic entities. They preserve certain correlation between direct component and the semantics. That is why they easily express euphemistic assessment because periism, and on the basis of this feature they euphemize their speech. And then there was a question of criteria of attribution. As there's one common criteria which we used to refer as a phraseology compared should weaken the adverse evaluation of the object, the negative character denoted by and to a smaller degree negative reaction that the phraseological is given. Some units, because of their cultural identity, create in the atmosphere of communication, calm down, neutralizes any discomfort. However, phraseology is still limited and determined by the limits of specific communication. For example, when expression is perceived as an attempt to get out of direct contact, a tabooed expression, or when the emotionally expressive color does not interfere with the use of, in the context of bribery and phraseological units, colloquial color, such as take it on the pull, put it under the tail, I don't think they reflect the overall strategy of the speaker or stay as a matter of courtesy. Ekaterina Yurievna and Marina Nikolaevna, in your reviews you touched upon about similarities, differences of the common features found in ontological features, principles, archetypes and models of behavior, and in the similar agricultural image of the world of both nations, and also a number of phenomena of social character such as fortune teller, gypsy, dishonesty of courts, ambiguous attitude to bribery and theft, and careless attitude to government-issued property and others. Discrepancies on stereotypes and views in the cultural and historical spheres of life. For example, the Arabic metaphors reflect features of the desert, climate, rituals, traditions, beliefs, and practices of Muslim and Russian background information in different periods. They reflect the Christian image of the world, symbols, and attitude of the Russian people to classical literature. And one more mismatch, that the relation to prostitution in Russia is more tolerant than in the Arabic world. This is manifested in the metaphorical and humorous expressions such as priestess of love, worker of the panel, fun businesses, etc. In Arabic, linguocultural phraseological units demonstrate more judgment, as availability of metaphorical from religious discourse such as darn greenery, do obscenity, sinful behavior, etc. And in general, as compared to Russian, the Arabic has more religious phraseological euphemisms that represent this vice. And in conclusion, once again, I would like to thank members of the Dissertation Council for interesting points for discussion. They are very valuable critical remarks and questions which allowed me to clarify some provisions of my thesis, for pointing out a number of publications I have not taken into account. I will try to do all this in my future work. Thank you very much. Of course, we are all absolutely positive that you will continue your research. Dear members of the Council, I have to ask each of you if you are satisfied with the applicant's answers. Yelena Ivanovna is satisfied. Irina Vladimirovna. Yes, I'm fully satisfied, thank you. Yekaterina Yurievna. Yes, I'm satisfied. Marina Nikolaevna. I am also fully satisfied, surprisingly, with the answers. With a hope for the future. Please, dear guests, dear attendees, is anyone willing to speak? Maybe someone has questions regarding the theme of the thesis and the speech of the degree applicant. No one has any questions. Thank you. We received no questions online, and that means no one of the listeners got any questions. So everything seems to be very obvious and clear, and that is why let me give the floor to the academic advisor, to Mikhail Borisovich Popov. Can you hear me? As the academic advisor, I have to say only the good things. First of all, I would like to start what I liked about him as a doctoral student. First of all, when he came to St. Petersburg University, he came with his own scientific interests, with ready scientific interests. When he wrote his thesis in Cairo University, where he graduated, took a master's course. He wrote on euphemisms in Russian and methods of translating them into Russian. So when he came here, there was no need to find a theme, to persuade him to study a topic theme that would be interesting for me. It was obvious that he is interested in phraseology, phraseologism, euphemism, and in human vices. And that is why it was obvious that the theme should be related to this. This made my life as an academic advisor much easier. In addition to that, he came quite well prepared, as a well-prepared researcher. His master's thesis was quite good, so everything was well. And the third point is that he already at that time he spoke good Russian, and so our working language was Russian and not Russian as a foreign language. And as you know, sometimes doctoral students who don't speak good Russian, not native speakers, so they sometimes have a hard time, and we had no problems of this type. And I think you could feel this today when you heard Mohammed's presentation. And well, the work progressed normally. He was very punctual, active, hardworking student. He made many presentations at conferences several times a year, was very successful. And one thing I would like to say that, beg your pardon, the only thing maybe I had to hold him back with publishing the results of his study. He published 3 articles in the last year in June already, at the time when the main we made the main conclusions. And in general, I shouldn't touch upon the essence of his work. One thing I would like to say, that tasks he set himself, I think he managed to achieve, which from the beginning seemed relevant to me. And this one can also see in the reviews or stated by the reviewers. And the study, and this is a complete study which has relevance and scientific novelty, as we found, and practical significance even in the spheres, for example, in judicial linguistics, for example. We especially thank Tatiana Simonina for paying attention to this side of the work, and how successful, how complete is this study. Of course, the dear council members, you have the opportunity to judge. Thank you, Mikhail Borisovich. Now, council members, we have the opportunity to take a break to discuss. Dear colleagues, Ekaterina Yurievna, Marina Nikolaevna, I have a suggestion not to take this break, because I think we don't have much to discuss. There will be no discussion, I think, and it seems to me, I see we all agree. I'm asking our respected colleagues working in the remote access mode, Ekaterina Yurievna and Irina Vladimirovna, do you agree to make your decision? Yes, of course we agree immediately without no technical break. Also, I have to ask everyone present and our degree applicant if you have any feeling or questions related with working in this mode, and if you have no such questions, we shall proceed to voting. Thank you. I don't have any questions. I am very satisfied. Thank you. Now, let me proceed to a very important stage of our session. I will ask each council member individually about his decision. Elena Ivanovna Siliverstova, your opinion? I'm for. Thank you. Irina Vladimirovna Zykova, for. Irina Yurievna Protasova, for. Thank you. Marina Nikolaevna Priyomasheva, for, of course. And my opinion is also positive. I also vote for. Thus, dear, I put the, no, I should remind you that the decision of the Dissertation Council awarding academic degrees shall be considered positive if more than a half, but not less than 3 members of the Dissertation Council present at the session voted for it according to Article 23 of the Order. Since we have all voted for, I believe that we may congratulate Mansour, Mohammed, Hassan, Sammani on being awarded degree of Candidate of Philological Sciences, Specialty 10-0201, Russian language. Our decision was made unanimously. Dear colleagues, following our procedure, I have to ask once again, because our session is held like this, do council members or other present have any questions regarding the procedure of our meeting? Well, thank you very much. Let me congratulate, and usually we shake hands, but in today's situation we cannot do that, and I would like to congratulate you once again. Mansour, Mohammed, I know you very well. I know how you spoke at international conferences. Your speeches were always very interesting and very well motivating. And Marina Nikolaevna, of course not only Marina Nikolaevna, we were all very interested. And thank you for mastering the language so well that we enjoyed hearing your speech. Thank you once again, and we all congratulate you. At that, I declare the session open. Please stop the online broadcasting. I thank all the colleagues. Thank you very much. Closing remarks of the applicant. You have 2 minutes, please. I would like to thank dear chairman and members of the council. I am very grateful to you for agreeing to participate in this council, for your valuable comments and observations, and for this interesting discussion. And I will certainly take your recommendations and advice into account in the future. I also thank members of the expert group who recommended my work for defense, and its chairman, Natalia Viktorovna Pushkareva, as well Elena Borisovna Kuzmina, Olga Vladimirovna Vasilieva, and Yafia Yosef Khan. Their useful comments and recommendations helped me to finalize my thesis at the final stage. It's a great honor for me that my academic advisor was Mikhail Borisovich Popov. Mikhail Borisovich, thank you very much for those years of work, for positive and fruitful atmosphere you have created. I hope to continue our cooperation. Also, I would like to express my gratitude to all the staff of St. Petersburg University of the Philology Department. I'm proud to be a postgraduate student of this university, and especially I'm grateful to the entire faculty and the head of the Russian language department. Also, let me use this opportunity to thank for support and assistance of the Bureau of Culture of Embassy of Arab Republic of Egypt in Moscow. And of course, I would like to sincerely thank all my Egyptian teachers and colleagues at the Russian language chair of Ain Shams University in Cairo. Also, I very briefly would like to thank my family, parents and relatives for their support and assistance. Also, I'd like to separately thank my colleagues, friends and colleagues, Egyptian postgraduate students at the universities of St. Petersburg. And now, the least but not less important, many thanks to the staff of Dissertation Council Activity Support Department for the excellent work for organizing document preparation for defense and in general for organization of today's session. Thank you very much. to all of you for your attention. Thank you. Well, this is the end. We are free. Please stop online broadcasting. Thank you and goodbye.